a very warm welcome to QNews Economic Bulletin, sir. So what is the immediate risk of France entering a sovereign debt crisis, and how could this destabilize the broader Eurozone?
Well, thank you for your question. As you said, France is a large economy and also a mature economy. So this should not be an economic crisis, but mostly a political crisis. And it's the mishandling of politicians of French economy. Because France has a lot to offer in terms of research, development, manufacturing, export, everything else.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you, but before going on, why do you read it and why is your narrative that it is a political crisis, it's not an economic crisis?
Because the cause of this is a slow economic growth. And the cause of a slow economic growth comes from three factors. Number one is mishandling of geopolitics, which number one is Ukraine war. Number two is the globalization for the last 20 to 30 years, which all the jobs in France has gone to China. It seems like the French government working for Chinese. We have to reverse that globalization and start reindustrialization program in France. And number three is the rift that they have with US. So on terms of geopolitics, that's number one. Then it comes to number two is regulations. You have net zero climate change, plus other high regulation, which is a form of taxation, high taxation. Then you have inflation, number three, which is because France and generally Europe has lost access to cheap energy since 3 years ago, since the start of Ukraine war. So these are the issue. But more importantly, generally in Europe, the problem they have is there is a big role for government. Public sector is about 40% of economy, and they need to privatize that 40%. If we compare it to US, the public sector is only 10% of the economy. So there is that 30% gap, which Europe could easily privatize in order to improve efficiency.
Perfect explanation, sir. With a fourth prime minister likely to fall, what are President Macron's remaining options to form a government capable of passing a crucial budget, sir?
Well, thank you for that question again. If we look at it, we have the far left in France, which all they want is more taxes on the rich. And they think there is that abundance of wealth and they can just tax it and solve all the problems. That's all they see. And also they want larger government, so that 40% of the economy, they want it to go to 60 or 70% of economy for the public sector. Then you have the far right. All they talk about is anti-immigration. Like if we control immigration or bring it to zero, then all the problems we solve. Then there are people like Macron in the centrist who hardly make any serious decisions. All they try to do is manage politics and stay in power. Even Bayero, the prime minister, some people are saying he actually brought this because he wants to be a presidential candidate in 2 years' time. And there is now this deficit in Europe about honesty in politics, because most of the politicians, all they care about is being elected. So they make false promises to be elected. But when it comes to governance, they cannot deliver. So there is that lack of honest politics in Europe right now.
Sir, how does this political paralysis affect France's capacity to lead on vital European issues like Ukraine and common defense?
This is another thing. For example, with Ukraine, they have several conferences, they have several coalitions, they have so many statements they make, yet they've delivered nothing, and they're relying on USA. And then when it comes to parliaments, whether it's a British parliament or French parliament You don't see any solutions. You don't see any plans. All you see is politicians shouting at each other. And it seems whoever shouts bigger, louder, he wins the day. And that's what we've come to the liberal democracy after 100 years where it's become mass politics. After 100 years of mass politics, this is what we are getting right now.
Sir, is the fundamental structure of the French Fifth Republic designed for strong executive power now falling to function? Rather failing to function, sorry.
Yes, that's a great question. And I believe, in my opinion, regardless how much you improve a system, unless you have competent people, honest people, you will not get anywhere with any system. So you have the best system in the world. But if you don't have competent people in charge, you don't have honest people in charge, the system would fail. If you have a system which is not very well functioning, but you have competent people and you have honest people, that system would perform better. That half system would perform better than a full system with dishonest and incompetent people. So I go again back. More than the system, we need competent and honest politicians.
Can France realistically and painful austerity measures given its massive debt and deficit, sir, or will social unrest become inevitable?
Well, right now, France has a shortfall in terms of income, balancing its books, about 6%. Usually, if you had a deficit or a shortfall every year, between 2 to 3% is acceptable because the economy used to grow at 2 to 3%. So you say, okay, our deficit, our shortfall is 2 or 3%, but it's compensated by the growth in the economy by 2 or 3%. But right now, when the average growth in the economy is 1%, and then the shortfall is about 5 to 6%, and most of it goes to finance the debt, as you mentioned, then we will have a crisis moment of payment when it comes.
Does the EU have the tools to prevent a French fiscal crisis from spiraling into a continent-wide problem? Or are we seeing a repeat of the early 2010s debt crisis dynamics, sir?
What is going for EU is that it has its own bank, ECB, European Central Bank, and it has its own currency. So they could print more money, they could lend within each other. I don't think that would have a much effect on the inflation, that side of it. So inflation will not be a worry, but the growth will be a worry. You could handle this. It's a remedy. It's a short-term remedy. You could save the situation now, but the cause is slow growth, and unless that is addressed, we will be having this conversation all the time.
From London, that was political and economic analyst Babak Emamian. Thank you very much for your insights, sir, for joining us in